kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Space and Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, February 3rd, 2024, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Cinemaster's Reviews. A bit of a late start tonight. I apologize, just dealing with some technical stuff. But we have an exciting show tonight. We are going to be reviewing Companion, the new film by Drew Hancock, as well as the new DreamWorks animated film Dogman, based on the children's novels by Dav Pilkey. I say we jump right in, starting with our first review tonight. Companion. This is directed by Drew Hancock, from the producers of Barbarian. If you saw that movie a few years ago, they kept a lot of the details under wraps. It was a really cool horror movie. And watching this movie, there are definitely some things I'm going to be having to tiptoe around as I explain the plot of it. I apologize. If you've seen the trailers, I'm going to be giving away only the things you've seen the trailers. This focuses on a normal couple by the name of Iris, and focus on a normal girl by the name of Iris. She's in a what seems like a loving relationship with her boyfriend, played by Jack Quaid. Iris is played by Sophie Thatcher, and everything seems okay. But very early on in the movie, we realize that Iris is in fact a robot, bought by Jack Quaid's Josh. They have a very interesting relationship. We are introduced to them as they are going up on a trip to with one of Josh's friends, played by Rupert Friend. He is a Russian mobster. He has a lot of money. And without spoiling too much, Josh and his friends want to use Iris for certain things, to get away with certain things. It would be a little bit of a spoiler if I said too much, so I'm going to be trying to be vague about this. It's always kind of hard to review these movies that after you see it, you can tell the people that made it did a particular job trying to hide certain details about what we were getting. But this is a really cool sci-fi movie. I'll be honest, I did really enjoy this. Once again, like I said, out of the gate, this is going to be a difficult film to talk about, but I'm going to try my best. It takes the concept of humans being in a relationship with an android, with a robot, and it does some very interesting things with that. Again, that is not a spoiler. You learn pretty early on that Iris is a robot. It makes certain scenes in the beginning very fun, when you very like disturbing in a way, when you realize how Josh is kind of controlling her. It takes a bit to really show like how disturbing of a relationship this really is. And I think for a really cool, concept that I think we've seen before, like this is things that that shows like the Twilight Zone and Black Mirror have probably dealt with. I do think this movie handles it in a very respectful way, and handles it in a very fun way, and is able to make a really thrilling thriller out of it. The performances, Sophie Thatcher as the lead character of Iris. I think Sophie Thatcher, this is the second thing I've seen her in. The first thing I saw her in was last year with Heretic. I think she is excellent here. I think she does a great job at making you empathize with this, making you sympathize and empathize with this character, who is having her world just like turned on her head of realizing that she's a robot, and realizing that she's been used by her boyfriend, with Jack Quaid. During the scene when Iris first realizes that she's a robot, she's sort of like, okay, so I'm a robot. It doesn't mean that our relationship is over. It doesn't mean that we can't still love each other. And seeing where that goes is really unfortunate for the character. But yeah, Sophie Thatcher does a really good job at playing the different levels of Iris throughout the movie. The character's intelligence is raised and lowered through different settings on the app that controls her, and I think that's really fun. Yeah, Sophie Thatcher is getting a really, really great performance. Jack Quaid, he is becoming an actor that every single thing I see him in, I am just really, really enjoying him. I think the first thing I saw him in was Scream 5. I'm a big fan of The Boys, and I think he's really great in that show. I think he is really good at just playing these characters that have a just sort of like douchey undertone to them and just come from like this weird layer of privilege. And like Jack Quaid can play likable characters, and I think at the beginning Josh is a likable guy, but as the movie starts going on and as certain things start going wrong for him, you see just how sensitive he is and how little of an and how big of an ego he has and how like small and how easy it is for his feelings to get hurt. And just watching him, a lot of the humor comes from just how just come from how sensitive his character is and how he just needs to win and how he needs every single thing to go his way. And I think that is really, really fun. Just seeing Jack Quaid just go full like arrogant asshole towards the end of this movie. And when it needs him to be like a little bit villainous, movie does a really, really good job. Again, this is going to be, if you want to go into this movie completely blind, I would recommend you don't watch this review because it is kind of impossible to talk about this movie without spoilers. But if you're willing to just hear it, yeah, I think Jack Quaid does a really, really great job. Well, it does fun things with the concept of, oh, this human is dating this robot. Does this robot have rights? Because it is so humanoid. When she realizes that she is a robot, what does that mean for her? While it does have some fun ideas with that, and while it does have some thrilling moments, I'd say around like towards the end of this movie, it does try to handle like a lot of heavy science fiction commentary with it and uses it to delve into like modern day politics of like gender roles and relationships. And I don't think that is like necessarily the strongest. It's not subtle at all. It's very, very blunt. And while it's handled better than movies maybe like Don't Worry, Darling, or even like Blink Twice, which I think I like this movie a little bit more. This movie is not this like really thought-provoking movies about a movie about like modern day gender roles and how men in relationships treat women from an abusive standpoint. It does shed light on that, but it's not looking at it in the most like nuanced way. So if you're looking for like a really intelligent script, this movie probably isn't for you. But if you're just looking for a nice, thrilling, like fun science fiction movie, I think it does a really great job at doing that. Movie does go to some pretty fun places throughout, puts our characters in really perilous situations, and they find really creative ways to get out of it, find really fun ways. Right when you think our characters are like, okay, we're finally out of the situation, they finally have the capability to think like, okay, how do I get out of this? Just something bad happens, or their programming, in the case of Iris, just makes it so that she has to mess up. And I think that's a really, really fun way of how this movie keeps you on your toes. I'm going to remember the soundtrack a lot for this movie. It has a lot of really, really great music moments when just like really violent things start happening or really thrilling things start happening. The soundtrack is very, very smartly used. It's not paced maybe the greatest. Deals with a lot of flashbacks to sort of give context into everything, especially with the relationship of Iris and Josh. And for a movie that's like a little bit over an hour and 30 minutes, it does seem a little long, specifically towards the end. We're dealing with two movies this week that are short but feel a lot longer. And I think I think just the issue with this is it's not really paced the best. I think towards the end they just start doing so much that you just sort of like feel a little bit out of breath towards the end. Which on the one hand I do think is fun because it does make that ending scene so much more thrilling. But also you're like, okay, can we just like calm down for like 5 minutes so I can like catch my breath for a second? Honestly, this movie would have been like 5 minutes longer. I think I could have liked it even more. But as it is, I do think it is a pretty solid sci-fi movie, and it does end in a really satisfying place. Again, it makes you care for the characters that it wants you to care about. It makes you hate the characters that you don't like. The supporting cast is good. Lucas Gage is someone I've seen in some other smaller things. He was in How to Blow Up a Pipeline a few years ago. He was really good in that. Really enjoyed him in White Lotus and the season of Fargo he was in. And yeah, he plays one of Josh's friends. And without spoiling too much, his character also goes into some really unique places. But yeah, I think this was a really, really fun movie. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, 0 being awful, 10 being incredible, I'm going to go a 7.5 out of 10. I know some people that are really, really loving this movie. I don't think I can quite get that high. I don't think it's just quite as good as some people do. Doesn't quite reach those highs for me, but like the performances are really great. I just viewed it as like a really fun, cool science fiction thriller. And if you're looking for that, I would highly recommend you go see this in theaters. If not, you can probably wait till it's on streaming. But yeah, if you want something to see early on in the year, this is something that will not be disappointing you. But yeah, I say we head right into our second review for the night, that being Dog Man. This is the newest film from DreamWorks Animation, directed by Peter Hastings. Like I said, this is based on the novels by the children's novels based on written by Dave Pilkey. He was the guy that wrote the Captain Underpants books. I read a lot of those books as a kid. I have never really read any of the Dog Man books. And watching this movie, I think the number one thing I can really say that I want to commend it for is the animation and the humor. It feels like Dave Pilkey's writing, and I think the animation does a really great job at capturing his illustrations and capturing his artistic designs. I'm personally not the biggest fan of it. I think everything just looks a little bit like under detailed. But if I'm judging on accuracy of it to its source material, I do want to say this movie does an excellent job at capturing that spirit of what does seem like a really, really fun book series. I should probably get into the plot. We open on a police officer and his dog. They are chasing after a sentient cat, voiced by Pete Davidson. Cat's name is Petey. Petey is just a character. He just wants to do evil. He views himself as a villain. He's just trying to cause mayhem every single place he goes. He's escaped from prison multiple times. We see this throughout the movie where the main cop arrests him, and then he ends up escaping from prison. Then he gets arrested again. Then he ends up escaping from prison again. One of the things I'll get to that later. But an accident happens with this police officer, and his head ends up becoming completely shot or just completely inept, and he cannot use his head anymore, and his dog can no longer use his body. So some of the doctors are just like, hey, why don't we just take this dog's head and this man's body and just combine them, and they create a half dog, half man hybrid. Has the intelligence of a man, but cannot speak, can only talk and barks. It sounds like a really silly premise. It's kind of RoboCop coded, but the movie owns it. It is for children, and I think for that, I think it does a lot of really fun things with this premise, and it just owns the fact that this is a sentient dog and a sentient man. Again, I just think this is a really sweet movie. Not only is it a really sweet movie, it's actually kind of sad. Like when Dog Man does become Dog Man, he goes back to his old house. He learns that his wife has just completely moved on and has completely and has found a new husband and has started a new life. And Dogman's just kind of just sort of accepts his fact and just moves into a house by himself. And while I commend that for showing this great message of hey, look, you got to move on. It is just interesting. The movie just doesn't try to resolve that plot line in any way. Again, I'm probably looking too much into this for this being a kids movie, but I was surprised at just how sad this movie does get at certain points. But I also do think it is a really sweet movie. The story, really surprised with how funny the movie is. The humor of this movie, it is joke after joke after joke. And I think DreamWorks, the good DreamWorks movies are really, really great at that. And I think what helps is that all the jokes genuinely do tend up landing. There are these really fun puns that I think the movie does. And yeah, just like the third act of Companion, all the humor of this movie is just coming at you at a joke a second, and to the point where some jokes go over your head, but there weren't any jokes that really made me groan, and I do think that is commendable. What I will say, if I were to say my number one issue with this movie, I think there's almost too much plot in this film. I just explained everything with Dog Man. The character of Petey, voiced by Pete Davidson, is kind of a secondary main character. Halfway through the movie, he decides to clone himself, and he creates a younger version of himself named Lil Petey. By the way, Lil Petey is maybe the cutest movie character I have seen in a while. Like so sweet. The whole joke of him is he's the complete opposite of Petey. He just wants to help people. He is like the cutest person in the cutest cat in the world. Every single time this guy was on screen, I loved it. Towards the second half of the movie, he meets Dogman, and Lil Petey and Dogman become friends. And but yeah, like Petey becomes like a main character halfway through the movie. He creates his own another villainous character who ends up getting sentience, and he ends up becoming like the main villain towards the end of this movie. It's so much, and like there were points where I was like, wait, what's going on? Like the movie, once again, this is a movie that is less than 90 minutes, and it just moves so quickly. And for a movie that is intended for kids, I was shocked as to how lost I was at certain points of the plot. So I think if there was just one major complaint, it's that I just wish this movie took some time to breathe and really like flesh out its story at points. Because if I'm an adult and getting lost, I couldn't imagine what kids are going to be thinking. Then again, if it is for kids, they're probably just going to be enjoying the humor, enjoying the visuals. So I shouldn't look too much into that. But I do just want to say, for a kids movie, this plot is very dense and a little bit confusing. Just looking at my notes. Once again, even though it is super short, I do think the ending weirdly does drag on just a little bit too long, and I think that is just how bloated the plot does feel towards the end, and just how many things it does need to wrap up with its new villain, with all the relationships to the characters, with Petey and his son, Petey's relationship with Dogman, and just seeing how everything just sort of comes together towards the end. The ending just does feel like really just overstuffed. And I remember looking at my watch towards the end of the movie. I was like, okay, we have like 25 minutes. The ending feels like 45 minutes. And I was like, for a movie that's less than 90 minutes, I should not be feeling this feeling. And like, this is a movie I like, but if it just would have like maybe slowed down at certain points, I think I would have loved it. Not even slow down, maybe just take out like some of the plot points. I could have really ended up loving it. But yeah, I think my major takeaway is it's just always fun to see good animated movies that are as funny as this and feel like an old classic, like almost like Looney Tunes cartoon, with how quick the humor is. Like it can at times work to its detriment, but I think, but I do just think this style of humor is not often seen in movies nowadays, and I think it is just fun. And I think it is a breath of fresh air to see this in theaters and to see a nice a really nice animated film for kids be released, especially so early on in the year. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, I rarely ever do this. I don't do this. I don't. It's not that this hasn't happened because I try to mix it up. It just rarely ever works like this. I'm giving my second movie this week the same score as the first one, a 7.5 out of 10. This is not a classic for me, but it definitely gets the job done. A really fun movie, definitely a good animated movie. If you have kids, I would highly recommend you go take them to the theater. It's not like a must-see if you don't, but you're definitely gonna enjoy yourself watching this, watching Dogman. But yeah, this does bring us to the ending of our show this week. Again, thank you all for watching. Remember to like and subscribe to the video store. It helps grow our channel a lot. Look, we've gotten a Dogman movie. We've gotten a Captain Underpants movie. Where's my Ricky Ricotta movie? Does anyone remember those books? Ricky Ricotta and His Mighty Robot. Books were awesome. But yeah, next week I'm going to be reviewing Heart Eyes and Love Hurts. Really exciting show next week. Thank you all for watching. Again, sorry for being so late. Happy I was able to do the show. And as always, watch more movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.